And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DeRienzo. Joan Musi is out this week, but she'll be back next. And our guest is, again, joining us, Doug Greene. Welcome to Let Them Talk, Doug.
Thank you, Paul. It's good to be back.
Now, Doug, you're really, we've had you on because you really know what's going on as far as medical marijuana legislation in New York State and nationwide.
Drug policy in general.
Drug policy in general. And we've been talking about drugs. We talked about the Rockefeller drug laws before they were repealed in previous shows.
Not exactly repealed, but there were substantial reforms that were done, which are...
I thought it was repealed now, though.
No, it's not repealed. There are still mandatory minimum sentences, but the amount of drugs you need to get a sentence is higher. There has to be sale to minors involved, as well as drug kingpin status. They still do exist, but a lot more people have been able to get out of prison than were in the relatively minor reforms that were enacted in 2004 and 2005.
Did they go and release people who had been previously given these long sentences?
Yes. A lot more of them than were done in 2004 and 2005. Those just affected the A1s and the A2s, the people with the
major felonies.
Yeah, with the people with the most amount of drugs.
I see. Well, I see now it's been extended to other groups as well. I see. So we have a much more rational drug incarceration system these days in New York State than years before, in the past years.
Yes, somewhat more rational. As a matter of fact, the Senate Democrats now are sort of running on the Rockefeller drug law reform as one of the things that they've accomplished.
That's an amazing change, because when you think, Doug Greene, that it used to be sacrosanct. The war on drugs was sacrosanct just up till a few years ago. What happened? What changed in New York State?
Well, I think a lot of things changed.
Ronald Reagan was no longer in office. George Bush was no longer in office.
Well, what happened was that finally, after many years, there was enough political force behind the idea. I mean, you had someone like David Paterson become governor. When David Paterson was Senate Minority Leader, he was a champion of Rockefeller law reform. He actually commissioned a report for the Senate Democrats laying out the outlines of a reform plan. And of course, the Democrats took over the state Senate, and this was actually one of the things that they were able to achieve before the coup happened last summer. After the
so they just barely got it in.
They just barely, yeah.
Even what little reforms that have happened barely.
Barely.
Wow. What is this, the power of the prosecutors in New York State? New York State prosecutors, they're the ones.
The prosecutors were adamantly against any type of reform for a long time, and they're still a very powerful group. The correctional unions and the Association of District Attorneys.
So it's it was good business to have the Rockefeller drug laws for certain segments.
Well, it was great business for a lot of upstate communities. We had 7 neighborhoods in New York City that provided most of the Rockefeller drug law offenders, and at the same time, on the Corrections Committee, you had all these upstate Republicans in whose districts these people were being incarcerated. So you had people moving from parts of New York City, upstate New York, providing jobs for the correctional unions up there, as well as a great increase in population. According to the census, prisoners were counted in the areas in which they were incarcerated, not where they're from.
So that added to the political oomph of those districts.
Sure, there's all these ads going on right now, with a guy in the streets saying, marching along, saying, if you fill out the census, you'll get your fair share of roads and hospitals and schools, and these communities upstate were getting what some would consider more than their fair share, because people who weren't really from there and didn't want to be there were being counted as living there in the census.
Very interesting. So what's happening next with the drug laws in New York State? I was just reading in the paper that the Senate Democrats have a budget proposal to sort of try and balance the New York State budget by legalizing and taxing the sale and growing of marijuana.
Well, we're looking at a multi-billion-dollar deficit, so that in and itself is not going to balance the budget. But Senator Duane and Assemblyman Gottfried, who have been the legislative champions of medical marijuana, have estimated that New York State could raise about $15 million by licensing fees paid by the organizations that would be licensed to distribute marijuana under the bills that are currently being considered. And those are moving through the process. The Assembly has passed medical marijuana bills in 2007 and 2008. And would be poised to do so again. It's gone through the Assembly Health Committee, and last month the Senate Health Committee, which was the first committee that voted on it, passed it out. And then just today there was a vote in the Senate Codes Committee, and it was referred out of committee by a vote of 11 to 5. Two of those senators who voted yes without recommendation, which means they procedurally agreed to move it forward but didn't necessarily support it. And next it will be going to the Finance Committee for consideration.
Really? Does it have a chance this year?
Yeah, we think it has a good chance. We're still working on securing the necessary votes we need, but it's got a good chance.
Well, that comes full circle to me, Doug Greene, because as I was saying in our earlier question, I said, I asked how is it that there was such a sea change between the times when the war on drugs was sacrosanct and now where it's considered good business sense, good sense.
Right, and medical marijuana is a big part of that.
How do we get around to that situation?
Well, I think people are seeing the power of people who need marijuana for medicinal purposes, and even the power of recreational marijuana smokers. A good case in point is that NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, had reached an agreement with Neutron Media, which is a subsidiary of CBS that does outdoor advertising, for a series of 15-second ads to appear on the super screen in Times Square. And CBS decided to cancel their contract and said, we'll let you know when we change our morals. And this produced some outrage. Change.org, which is a major progressive site, whose readers actually just recently, again, for the second year in a row, voted legalizing marijuana recreationally and medicinally the number one issue. Change.org circulated a petition to get CBS to reverse its policy. And 10,000 people wrote to CBS, and CBS changed its mind, and the ads started running a week ago Sunday.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating.
On the 14th.
Now, Doug Greene, we have some interesting statistics here, and what I wanted you to do is to describe them for us. They're fascinating, but what I want you to do is if you could step up here, do me a favor, and just stand right here and hold these right in front of the screen.
Sure.
And as you're holding them, explain to folks what the top one is. Hold it down a little bit further. Okay. There we go. Over this way. Now, what are we showing here? Okay,
what we're showing here is arrests for marijuana in New York City going from 1978 to 2008. And you can see that over time, as you get into the 90s and into the Giuliani administration, it starts spiking upwards, and spikes upwards to 2000 and goes down a little bit, and then it starts spiking up again after 2004. And this is part of a report that a professor at Queens College named Harry Levine did for the NYCLU that came out in the spring of 2008, and he's since been updating these figures. This unfortunately does not go to 2009, but the 2009 figures came out last month, and it's a shocking increase. As you can see, there are about 40,300 arrests in 2008. In 2009, there were about 46,400 arrests. That's up over 15%.
So we used to think that that Bloomberg was an improvement over Giuliani, but he's continuing similar policies and programs.
Well, at least in terms of marijuana arrests, yes, certainly. As a matter of fact, by now...
I thought he smoked marijuana.
Well, he did, but then again, so did Barack Obama, so did George Pataki, so definitely did David Patterson. And actually, on the graph you'll see at the bottom of the page, Bloomberg has now arrested...
Let's look at that. That's fascinating.
More marijuana smokers in New York City than Dinkins, Koch, and Giuliani combined.
Wow. Amazing that Koch made so few arrests.
Right. Well, of course, that was New York City back in the late 70s. Carter
Sure.
was in the White House, was talking about decriminalization.
Right.
Never got around to it, but that was, that was kind of an era that we only now are we starting to see something like that that happen again.
What is it about marijuana arrests that fascinate the Giuliani and Bloomberg administration, basically the Republican administrations of the last
Well, it's
20 years?
it's really, I think, what fascinates the cops. I mean, arresting a marijuana smoker is a pretty good deal for a cop. I mean,
Yeah.
most marijuana smokers are, fairly well educated, peaceful. They're probably not going to try and attack you or pull a gun on you. They don't necessarily smell. It's, and you get to spend a couple of hours, get some overtime doing that.
I see. So it's really become almost just like the prisons in upstate New York. It's become ingrained into the way of doing things.
Yeah, it's definitely become ingrained into the way of doing things. I mean, this is definitely a policy that is coming down from the top levels of the NYPD.
Well, what do you think of this broken windows philosophy that Giuliani brought in? It seems they're continuing with it. Somehow if you arrest fare beaters, which I guess they're not really doing, if you arrest...
It's become a lot harder to beat a fare,
Right.
unless you're on a bus. I
Right.
guess, if you get on
People get on the back of the bus.
the back of the bus.
A lot of people do.
Yes.
And marijuana, these things, if you do these small things, you'll have an excuse to do sweeps where you'll find bigger crimes. You'll find people carrying guns because you stop them for jumping a turnstile, or you stop them for a joint, and then you search them, and
Right. I mean,
there's something else, another warrant or something.
Right.
else.
I mean, this is a great way to get people into the system, to get them fingerprinted, to get them photographed, to take
Right.
a sample of their DNA. You're in the database now.
Right. Oh, absolutely, for the rest of your life.
Right.
In the legal database for a small thing like that. Now, tell me, Doug Greene, what about speaking of law enforcement, did you follow the Mineo case?
Yes.
What did you think of that? What did you think of that case? That was the young man who said that he was basically sodomized by a police officer's nightstick who caught him smoking a joint, a roach,
Right.
marijuana joint.
I was, maybe I shouldn't have been, but I was somewhat surprised they were acquitted, especially when they had another police officer who was testifying against them.
Right.
But I also think there were perhaps problems in the chain of evidence. My understanding of the case is that Mineo did not necessarily seek medical attention right away.
So that's a good. If something happens,
If something happens,
get your pictures, get your.
If something happens, you do something right away. I mean, I remember there was one time I was rousted by the police for doing nothing more than smoking a beanie and sitting on the steps at Penn Station wearing
An aromatic cigarette.
An aromatic cigarette, a tobacco cigarette, wearing a T-shirt that had a marijuana leaf on it, and there were bystanders who saw what happened. I didn't get their information, and the Civilian Complaint Review Board really couldn't do anything. I mean,
Right.
they put something in their files, but
You need evidence.
you need evidence. You need
Absolutely.
right.
More than they might even need against you, unfortunately.
Yes. The
Right.
balance of power is very unequal in a circumstance like that where you're filing a complaint against the police.
Okay, Doug Greene, by the way, we're live, and our number's on the screen. It's 212-757-1538, 212-757-1538. There is a delay of about, 6-7 seconds. So if you do call us, please wait for us to have an opportunity to hear your question and respond to it, and turn your television down so that you're not confused by hearing your own voice on delay. So that's our number. We're here live. Doug Greene, and we're talking about the war on drugs in New York State, medical marijuana. What would medical marijuana look like in New York State?
Well, what medical marijuana would look like is you would have organizations that are licensed to dispense to caregivers.
Sure.
There's been a trend in New Jersey. New Jersey, early this year in February,
Sure.
passed a medical marijuana bill, which is very restrictive. Only about an ounce a month for medical patients, and a very strictly defined list of conditions is permissible for. New York State would allow people to have up to 2.5 ounces per month for any serious or life-threatening condition or as a result of the treatment for a serious or life-threatening condition.
I mean, we're going to have a lot more people driving in from New Jersey?
I presume,
Oh, no. I'm
No.
only joking. We have a caller. Call back, caller. I saw it. There it is. Okay, we're going to try and take the call.
Get that
and see-
caller.
Take the call and see what happens. Hi, you're on.
Just let them talk?
What?
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to say I love the show. Oh my God, this is perfect.
Do you have a question for her or comment?
Yeah, I actually do. I live in Los Angeles. I come here to visit family, and when I do, is there a way to get a card in Jersey or something like that, or maybe here in New York City, or I don't know.
A card?
A card. Yeah. Also, could you
Interesting.
turn your
Turn your TV down.
a little bit?
Yeah, turn your TV down, please.
Yeah. There is a provision of reciprocity which certain states do have.
Interesting.
In other words, where they will honor cards from other states, and there are states like Montana and Rhode Island, and I think there are one or two others that have reciprocity. But the New York bill, unfortunately, does not have reciprocity for patients from other states.
All right, that's something to push for.
But LA is fascinating. I just read a wonderful article in the forthcoming issue of Reason magazine about what's going on in LA.
LA means Los
Angeles.
Angeles, California, for people who might not have been ever out west.
Yeah, and Los Angeles has been referred to as the Wild West of medical marijuana because there were hundreds of dispensaries, and now the city of Los Angeles is really tightly restricting them, and there's going to be a lot fewer dispensaries that are going to be able to stay open.
What do they do?
That's
What are they
great,
looking to do?
I'm
Go ahead,
Yep.
caller.
Let me ask you this then. What if I'm walking down the street and I went to Jersey and I'm back in Manhattan and I'm just feeling good from Jersey, if you know what I mean. And I have my card with me. Would I have to go? Would I be arrested?
Well, if you had a card from Jersey and you were in New York City, is that your hypothetical here?
Say it one more time.
Is that your hypothetical here that somehow you've gotten a card, a medical marijuana card from New Jersey, and you're back in New York City?
Right.
Yeah, I don't think you would be covered.
I wouldn't be
Right.
covered. Oh wow.
No, you wouldn't be covered.
No,
you gotta
right.
you gotta stay in Jersey.
Got to stay in Jersey.
Gotta stay in
that's
Jersey,
funny.
and I mean, of
Okay.
course, you'd
All right,
have
only
to.
because it's so close to each other. Like you live in the city, you might go to Jersey or Connecticut.
Right. I mean, and Jersey's program is not actually fully set up yet. By the summer, there should be dispensaries open. I think there's going to
Right.
be 2 in
They
North
should go
Jersey.
into talks right now with New York.
What's
about,
that?
Hey, look, we're across the border. Something's going to happen anyway.
Right.
You should try to make this better for everybody involved.
Right. Well, hopefully we can. I mean, there's a really serious chance that this spring, New York is going to pass medical marijuana.
Right.
That would be awesome, and I think we should tax it. And I think that we should just, it's like cigarettes or like alcohol, and really, in the long run, everybody's going to they'll feel better anyway,
Right. I mean, there's definite financial advantages, though. There's certainly not the only reason to change our drug policies. But like we were talking about earlier, the proponents of medical marijuana in the New York legislature think they could raise about $15 million from the organizations that would dispense medical marijuana.
That would hire a lot of teachers.
Sure. I mean, and these marijuana arrests that we're talking about in New York City, we actually, Harry Levine, who did this report, estimates that each misdemeanor marijuana arrest is about $1,500 to $2,000 in total police and corrections costs. That's,
Billions.
70, well, in New York City, that's about $70 to $93 million. If you look at the people who were arrested in New York City.
Is that every year?
That's just last year.
Just last year?
Last year, if you're going at about 46,400 arrests,
Yeah.
that's just last year alone.
So $2,000 would be
Right.
$70 million.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
insane.
Wow. Okay, save money in arrests and then make money. It would be like over $100 million.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to if you were to actually legalize marijuana wholesale, there was a
Yes.
report that came out from Harvard economist Jeff Mirren in 2005, and he estimated that New York State, if it was to legalize marijuana, could probably raise about $54 million, but it could save about $565 million in
Wow.
enforcement costs.
$500 million.
More than $500 million.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, and you know what? And just to sort of give fire to the fuel, you know how like the soda tax that they're doing right now, they're trying to pass. I don't really know too
The
much
soda
about it.
tax?
I'm from LA, really, but you got to tax the soda, and you got to tax the everything in a weird way, except maybe health insurance. That's a whole different story.
Right. Well, we'd like to see less taxes, but it would be great if the right things were taxed.
Well, certainly, there's valid arguments about what the right level of taxation is and the right type of regulation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that our Colliers City Council did sort of a ham-fisted type of regulation, but it's better than prohibition.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's prohibition.
Taxation and regulation is
You know
better
what?
than
It happened
prohibition.
in '31 when the rise of the mob was only because people stopped having vodka.
Or prohibition, right, the mob. And you had Al Capone.
Right,
right.
and
all
look
those
at
guys weren't that was. I think that was a result of prohibition. I
It
mean,
sure
if it wasn't
was.
for like the fact that they made everything illegal, then everything is illegal.
Just watch the old TV show, The Untouchables.
right, and look at what's going on in Mexico.
Yes,
I
oh.
mean, this is a result of prohibition. There's estimates that these Mexican cartels make 60% of their profits from marijuana. Not everyone is smoking, grape diesel and these high-end brands that we see lovingly
Right.
featured in High
The
Times.
expensive stuff.
The expensive stuff. There's still a lot of people out there who are smoking Mexican brown.
That's what's out there.
And these cartels are making money from it.
Right.
Yeah, they-
It's so much. Growing one's own would be. It would be. I think environmentally, it would be a positive thing to get more people like a green thumb learning how to grow things, becoming self-sufficient. California has done some great. LA, especially up in northern. I don't know about southern, but northern California people are very self-sufficient about their medical marijuana. They just grow basically their own little patch. It's legal. Nobody bothers them. It seems to be the perfect thing to do.
Right, though, I mean, there have been some unfortunate unintended consequences. In Washington State recently, there have been several home invasions and cases of homeowners getting killed and robbers
Why
getting
is that?
killed. Well, because these people are aware of who's growing, and it's still, it's still the most valuable
You were talking about robberies.
robberies. Sure,
Robberies, criminal robberies.
Yeah.
But if there was more marijuana around and you took the legality out of it, I mean, we had Barbara Jackson on this show who was arrested on the streets of the Bronx. 71-year-old lady, grandmother in the Bronx, was arrested trying to buy medical marijuana for her cancer that she eventually succumbed from.
for cancer,
and,
right.
and we had her on the show. She was so wonderful to have on the show. We loved her greatly. And here was a woman, an elderly woman with cancer, forced to walk the streets of the South Bronx looking for somebody to sell her a nickel bag of weed. It's just a horrendous situation.
Right. There's actually a coalition now called New York Patients First, which is one of the groups that's working on passing medical marijuana, and they have a billboard that they're running in some districts upstate because some of the key swing votes that we're trying to get are some upstate Republicans. And there's one billboard that has a woman and it's standing by a door and it says, "This is her pharmacy."
Interesting.
Because
Well, there's some towns that get annoyed because they're growing the weed right there. You know what I mean? So I can understand the argument, but in the long run, you know what? Maybe we should just be a nation of farmers again. And why not farm the best American you can buy? We'll be like the Cuban cigars of the world. I don't know.
I always
You
wondered about that, too,
forward
yeah.
thinking in a weird way.
Everybody looks to the United States especially for pot grown in dirt. The Dutch, I guess, have the hydroponic thing down, but in the United States, they grow it in dirt.
yeah, American ingenuity is a great thing, and
It's amazing what they can do. The technology is already going all over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear that the way they farm stuff now is a lot more efficient. And you know what? Efficiency might be good, but maybe just a nice old-fashioned grown out west, in California where we have great farmland, and it would just be really cool, you know.
Sounds like a good idea. Thank you very much, caller. We're going to wrap up. We have a couple more minutes. Thanks for joining us.
All right, thank you very much, man. Have a good night, guys.
You too.
Thank you for calling in.
Thanks for calling in. Well, we have about 3 minutes left. Doug, what do you want to leave the viewers with?
Well, I'd like to leave with the viewers with a call to get involved, to please get involved in this issue. The wind is finally at our backs. Mm-hmm. There is definitely traction going on in drug policy reform. There was an op-ed in the Christian Science Monitor about a week ago in which they discussed the fact that the Obama administration has basically declared that legalizing marijuana is not on the table. And according to the Christian Science Monitor, they said the momentum is with the people who are trying to change marijuana policy for the better. And that's a good thing, because for so long we couldn't even get listened to, but now we have great popular support.
Did the baby boomers get old enough that they actually started to have influence? Is that it? The people had to listen to the baby boomers. They used to reject them.
Look, I think there's a lot of baby boomers who are still very conflicted about this issue, but I mean, especially among young people support this issue overwhelmingly.
Is that where so the support isn't coming from the 60s Woodstock generation?
There's some support from that generation. I mean, it really tails off as you get into the people in their 60s.
Well,
and
who
70s.
should be using it? They're the ones who would benefit.
Yeah, I know, which is kind of ironic. You would think that those people should be the most support. But when you talk about medical marijuana, even that there's still broad mass popular support for. But I'd love for the viewers to get involved. One of the groups I work with is Empire State NORML, which is the New York State chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. I'm on the board of directors of that group.
Right.
And get involved, learn about the issue. There's a group called Stop the Drug War, stopthedrugwar.org, which publishes a weekly newsletter on the issue called Drug War Chronicle. It's must-reading for people.
I read it stopthedrugwar.org. One word,
stopthedrugwar.org. It's must-reading for people who are in the movement.
We have half a minute. Doug Greene, thanks for joining us. It's been a great show. And here's your last comment for the next 20 seconds. What would you want to leave people with?
I would want to leave people with the thought that this is a serious issue. This is about reason. This is about science. This is about compassion for sick and dying people. And, you should care about changing drug policy in New York City and New York State and the United States.
Thank you. See you next week.